2026 hot seat talk, friends. We're talking scorching hot, mildly hot, hot maybe, but I don't agree. We're going to dive into all of these categories. We're going to touch on a couple of coaches. Again, we'll categorize them by what I just mentioned, and we're going to dive head first. We're going to start with Mike Norvell at Florida State. Now, we could talk about Mike Norvell for a long time. This is no surprise. If you saw the thumbnail, of course, Mike Norvell was on there. So, spoiler, we're diving right in. We're starting with him. All right. We all know the 13-0 season that Florida State had. It was awesome. I thought, hey, Mike Norvell was a great hire. I thought when they hired him, it was going to be a really nice fit. And at that time, it was. Now, we won't discuss the bowl game. That's an entirely different argument or conversation that we're not going to get into in this video. But the response the very next year was just not what it needed to be. From watching it in an outside perspective, as someone who's not a fan of Florida State, it just felt like one of those seasons that maybe was almost just uncontrollable. It felt like every tip ball went the other way. Every possible bad luck case scenario went the other way. The way they got left out of the playoff, it just felt like that lingered around the program for as long as possible. And that entire season it happened. So we reset. Florida State decides to stick with Mike Norvell, as I think they should have. And I was a firm believer that you give him another year, so we're talking 2025 now, that he's going to turn this thing around. And obviously you start the year off with a bang. At home, you beat Alabama, a top 10 team. You physically dominated Alabama. And I'm thinking, hey, I tried to tell everyone, man, Mike Norvell is the guy for this job. You start 3-0, you're ranked in the top 10. And yet again, the season just completely unravels. You finish the year 5-7, not what I expected at all. It felt like the locker room was lost. The discipline wasn't there. The defense was abysmal. And there's almost just no explanation. Now, Florida State was in a tough spot. Alabama strongly pursued Mike Norvell after the 13-0 season. And Florida State, in retaliation, or I guess in response, I should say, gave him a massive lump sum of money. And that puts them now in a financially tough spot where that buyout is astronomical for Mike Norvell. I don't even know the number off the top of my head, but it's extremely high. Now, a lot of fans feel as though this is just an obligation to keep Mike Norvell because of the financial burden that it places. But I don't believe that. I think that Mike Norvell could have a good season, but it's not without stating that his seat is scorching hot. You also have to factor in the fact that their first 6 games of the year, or at least first half of the season, rather, SMU, Bama on the road, Virginia at home. They have Virginia at home last year. They had Virginia on the road last year. They have them at home. Anyway, SMU, Bama, Virginia, Miami on the road, and then Louisville. So nothing easy. You play really the top of the ACC, absolutely the top of the ACC to start your schedule, and then you have Bama as well. So, I mean, that's a really brutal start for a team that I do think there's some promise there. Now, look, I like Tim Harris Jr., new offensive coordinator there at Florida State. Gus Malzahn, to me, was a legendary head coach and an offensive guru, but Tim Harris was there last year as a co-offensive coordinator, so I think there's a little bit of familiarity. We'll see what the change at quarterback looks like for Florida State this year. I believe it's Ashton Daniels will be the guy running that offense, but Tony White at the defensive side of the ball gets a little bit of talent that he can fuse in there. He's going to have to do better. Now, statistically, that Florida State defense was better last year than they were the awful year prior. Now, both years really, in retrospect, were quite awful if you think about it. But I do think there's going to be improvements, right? Deuce Robinson, you have Makai Danzy, you have a lot of talent. Quatravian Weisner comes in the backfield. So if Tony Harris can find a way to get that offense clicking, I think Tony White and that defense, if they can take another step forward, what's the number going to be for Mike Norvell? Is it 7 wins? Is it 8 wins? For me, I think it has to be at minimum 8-4. And even then, I think there's going to be a really tough debate where how do you make a decision that the fans back? I think there's a lot of fans that are completely out on Mike Norvell. They don't want him. Again, they feel like this is just an obligatory, we don't want to pay the buyout, so we're just going to ride with what we got type of situation. I don't think Florida State is quite that program. But again, I think 8 wins minimum. Even then, I think there's going to be a really big debate. It almost feels like Mike Norvell has to have a 9 or 10 win season and compete in an ACC that outside of Miami, I do believe is wide open. I think that second team that could make it to Charlotte could be really anybody. I mean, we saw a 7-5 Duke team win the conference last year. Now, I understand there was an astronomical tiebreaker situation, but that's enough for Mike Norvell. We understand that. We get it. We're on the same page. Let's move over to Luke Fickell. I'm going to scratch my head because that's exactly what this one makes me do. Luke Fickell came in, and I thought this was a good hire as well. 2022 at Cincinnati. Obviously, he was there before. Comes into Wisconsin, and in 3 seasons, he's gone bowl game, no bowl game, not even close to a bowl game. Just completely regressed in 3 years. I'm a 3-year kind of guy. I think by year 3 is when you should see your most improvement. And now, here's something to note. I don't think improvement is always statistics based. I don't think it always has to be a number. I'm not saying that by year 3, Luke Fickell needed to have 11 wins on the board and competing for a Big Ten championship. But the problem is he went from, 7 wins to 5 wins down to 4 wins. And the 4 wins last year were absolutely atrocious. It was a team that had no energy. They had no chemistry. They looked dead in the water. They got shut out in back-to-back games for the first time since 1977, if I'm not mistaken. It was awful. It felt like that team did not even show up to play. He lost the fan base. I don't think the locker room was ever there to begin with. So I have so many questions as to why this is still a project. Look, I just don't think that Luke Fickell is the guy. Now, Chris McIntosh, athletic director there, is completely and firmly in Luke Fickell's corner. He swears up and down that this is their guy. He's backed him with more money that they can put into the program. So again, I'm not saying that I think Luke Fickell is a bad coach. What I'm saying is I just don't think this has been the right fit. Now, Wisconsin's schedule this year isn't extremely difficult outside of week 1. But the thing is, week 1 in college football to me plays one of the more impactful parts of the season, especially back when there was no playoff. And if you lost one game, your season was essentially done if your goals were obviously a national championship. But for Wisconsin this year, you got to play Notre Dame in Lambeau week 1. That's tough. A lot of people are really high on Notre Dame as being arguably a top 5 team in the country. So you have a Wisconsin team that's got a coach that's on extreme hot seats, and then a Notre Dame team that's really good. So what I worry is, are they projected to lose this game? Yes. Is he going to get fired if they lose the first game of the year? No, that's not what's going to happen. But what I'm worried is, does that spiral and just stick in their head if they get boot stomped week 1 by Notre Dame? If, again, there's a big if on that, what does the rest of the season look like? What's the mindset? What's the confidence level? I just haven't seen anything that's given me faith that Luke Fickell's got this team bought into growing and getting better, because all they've done is regress and get worse. So if Luke Fickell doesn't win at least 8 or 9 games this year, again, McIntosh is firmly in his corner, but I can't fathom that the boosters and the alumni and that massive fan base in Madison would be in support of him sticking around for yet another season. All right. Honorable mention, at least in scorching seats, is Dave Aranda, one of the worst defenses in the country at Baylor. For a guy that's been a defensive guru, he is a defensive-minded guy. It's been a head-scratcher. But DJ Lagway comes into Baylor, not the toughest schedule in the world. The Big 12 is competitive. It's extremely competitive now, but it's a workable schedule. So we'll see what Baylor looks like. Obviously, they take on Auburn and Atlanta early in the season. I think for Dave Aranda, though, it's just been a really, really weird situation, and I obviously a new athletic director in there. I think he's going to have the string on a really, really tight rope this year. I could see if Baylor starts this year off a little bit wonky, maybe Lagway doesn't look as good. The defense is still struggling to get stops. If Auburn thumps them pretty badly early in the season on a neutral site, not even in Auburn, I could see Dave Aranda being out by halfway point of this season. So now let's get to the seats that I think are maybe mildly warm. Let's start with Shane Beamer. This one is interesting. All right, I'll try to keep this brief because, again, not really a shock. I mean, I had him on the thumbnail picture, but Shane Beamer's got to get it together. I do think he's the right fit. I just think it's been up and down and up and down, and that's the totality and really just the volatility of the SEC. It is such a cutthroat conference where you could have one Cinderella year, and listen, maybe Cinderella is not the right term, but I guess lightning in a bottle year. Now, South Carolina has felt like they've been close in so many games. They were close to the playoff, and then they fell off a cliff last year, although they still competed in some big games, right? They played up to the level of their competition. The biggest problem I've seen with Shane Beamer is they play down to the level of their competition. They have to be consistent. This season, 2026, is by far, lo and behold, the best, most talented roster that Shane Beamer is going to have with the Gamecocks. This has to be a 9 or 10 win season. Lenora Sellers is back. Dylan Stewart is back. Countless talented individuals on this team that have been together now for a couple of years. There is no excuse. South Carolina has a tough schedule, but you know what you're signing up for in the SEC. They have to capitalize. They have to win close games. All right. I don't think Shane Beamer will be fired with a 7 or 8 win season this year, but it's going to be completely underwhelming. Let's just call a spade a spade. I think it would be extremely underwhelming if South Carolina does not win at least 9 games at minimum. And I think that might heat up the seat for the following year. Look, I do think South Carolina loves Shane Beamer. I know he absolutely adores that job and he loves that program, but it is a results-driven business. So the results have to be there. And I think that'll mend a relationship. Again, if it's a 6 or 7 win season and they do hold on to him, which I think they probably would, I worry about, I guess, just the anatomy between the fan base and Beamer and the athletic department and that entire triage of relationship and how things progress moving forward. Last but not least, I got 2 more actually, so I won't say last that I guess I could kind of see or agree with is Lincoln Riley. I'm going to keep this one brief because I just don't see a world or a reality in where USC would fire Lincoln Riley after this season, because I'm looking at the future, not just this year. USC has a really, really tough schedule this year, although I do like the pieces they have. I love the Gary Patterson hire. I think that 4-2-5 defense is going to infuse some new life into this team and hopefully fix the kryptonite of Lincoln Riley, and that's always been consistency on the defensive side of the ball. Jaden Maiava and that offense will get theirs. It's a really tough schedule. Now, the biggest thing that Gary Patterson has on his hands is they've just got to be able to stop the run. That's it. I understand the 4-2-5 is typically favors a light box at times, so if they can find a way to stop the run, that's going to be huge. They have enough speed to play a defense like that, but did they have the size and the strength up front to hold Big Ten teams from running up and down the field all game long? All right, that's the biggest key. I think for Lincoln Riley, 8 or 9 wins this year keeps him in Southern California. I just don't see a world where they will fire him yet when you think about the fact that he has the #1 recruiting class. So a lot of those guys are young. What do they look like as they develop throughout? If he can continue to keep the talent pool and continue to grow talent, but also bring it in at the same time, I think that will extend, I guess, that timer that's on him. But it's felt like, hey, man, it's time to at least get us closer. Let's get to 9 or 10 wins. Let's at least be in the conversation with a top recruiting class, rather, that gives us a little bit more momentum going into the future. But we need to build. We need to see results and build. All right. Last one we're going to talk about. Jeff Lebby. I've seen his name swirling around the hot seat charts for quite a while now, and it really just it blows my mind. I cannot understand how Jeff Lebby is considered on the hot seat. Outside of maybe winning 1 game all of this year, I just don't know a world where he should be fired. Now, I understand when you look, again, I might sound hypocritical. I'm talking it's a results-driven business. You got to have results. But we're talking about Mississippi State. I get that they're 1-15 in SEC play under Jeff Lebby, but you look at the start they had last year, in year 2, mind you. All right. Earlier, I said I'm a 3-year guy, so I'm not too hypocritical here. It's year 3 for Jeff Lebby. I think we're going to see progress. We saw progress that I felt was almost ahead of schedule in the first half of the season. But let's not forget that some of those losses, they lost 2 games in overtime. They lost another game by 2 points. They had some really heartbreaking close losses last year against good football teams, against really, really good football teams. This is a program that is on the up and up and is continuing to grow. I think getting rid of Jeff Lebby would be the most asinine, ridiculous decision that this program could make right now. I think Curt Cignetti has done the biggest miracle in the sport of college football, without a doubt, but he's also done the biggest unintentional harm to the sport we've ever seen. Because I think a lot of these programs now believe that, hey, if this guy can win a championship in year 2 at Indiana, then Jeff Lebby should be winning a championship at year 3 at Mississippi State in the SEC. That's just not a reality. We cannot get ourselves stuck in this world that every hire is going to be the next Curt Cignetti. That is just not true. You have to give guys time. I'm a 3-year guy. I think that we should see progress. I do think Mississippi State will win a bowl game this year if he can continue to recruit, if he can dip into the portal, and if that athletic department can put more money into the football program. I think over time you're going to start to see him succeed. But having him on hot seat talk already is just mind-boggling to me. I just don't get it. But friends, that's all I got for this video. I really appreciate you. If you made it this far, that is super awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe, leave a like, comment, all that good stuff. We got a ton of content to hold us over until the season starts. We're getting closer, man. It's still early June, but hey, we can say we're a little less than 2 months away, give or take. Actually, no, we're further out than that. But anyway, I'm a hopeless romantic for college football. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.